whenever I do training, I try to think of it in terms of providing you guys handholds. That's what I say. Like you're climbing a wall, and we want to give you these handholds that you can grab onto. Are these handholds always true? Will they always work? No, but they'll work sometimes, and the sometimes is what gets you 1 or 2 or 3 more apps during a week than what most people get, right?
Welcome back to another episode of the Life Insurance Academy podcast. Today we have my main man, Chris Ball, in the room. Is this your first time here, Chris?
Yes. We jumped in the time machine all the way back to the first episode.
Yeah?
First time.
I tell you.
Long-time listener.
Do you know how bad we were at the beginning of this? Like how shaky we were?
Probably very similar to right now.
We're probably still shaky. We just have better microphones, I guess.
That's the difference, dude.
It is the
better
difference.
Backgrounds, better microphones, better producers. Matter of fact, this whole thing is auto-tuned.
Yeah? Like a little T-Pain? Call you C-Pain?
See, Adam's going to auto-tune us.
That'd be pretty good. Put a little lyric. Speaking of music, I know we're going to get in our topic today.
Yeah.
But we got a brand new guitar player.
Oh, dude, you don't have to put this on the podcast. Oh, my gosh.
I'm just saying, you're going to be the
Can
next
a guy
Luke Combs.
play guitar in his closet with the lights off? Can a guy do that?
Well,
no.
pretty soon we're going to have an episode talking about how to sell life insurance with a Fender.
With a Fender. I'm cool with that.
So you could do a whole presentation strumming. Yeah. No, but today we have a really exciting episode. I think this is going to be extremely valuable and relative to everybody listening. And it's really focusing on how to sell life insurance, but the importance of tonality.
Right.
And this whole podcast is very simple to understand, but it's these little nuances that we don't always think about, and these different examples, and when they're good, and when they help, and sometimes when they hurt, and little adjustments.
Yeah.
We just did our Life Insurance Academy virtual bootcamp telesales training, which was really cool to see. And these little tips and tricks and coaching nuggets that you guys are going to get today really are the things that are the simplest. We call it a simple tweak.
Yeah.
That can literally change you from struggling or stressing out or fighting through trying to get an app versus writing 10 apps a week.
Yeah.
Just completely, and it's the tiniest little thing. What are we talking about, Chris?
We did recently did a training that you can find in our training portal on Life Insurance Academy called the Language of Yes. Roger and I did this training. Roger and I did do this training experience with agents on the phone. We did a special Zoom, jumped into rooms, did actual coaching while they were on the calls. We had guest speakers come in. It was great. We will have more of these. So if you missed out.
And they're open to anybody and everybody.
Yeah, you don't want to miss the next one. I mean, it was ridiculously affordable. People made money. I mean, it's a great event, right? You can go to and you can make money on it. So
you get trained and profit.
We did this training, this Language of Yes, and it was kind of interesting to me because some of these things are so foundational, it's kind of weird. And I was looking at culturally where we are. I just don't think we're good at talking and listening anymore. We live in a culture where people are staring at their phones all the time.
Telling and yelling.
Right? People are talking while they're on their phone, scrolling, and not really in a conversation. So you're not really looking at each other anymore.
Adam, put your phone down.
There's no
I'm just kidding.
There's no tone anymore. It's kind of I don't want to get into the philosophy of it, but we're less human than we've ever been, it feels like. You know? So we're not good at talking anymore. We're not good at listening anymore. So
I think add to that is I feel like nowadays people are more self-centered, selfish,
right.
Unintentionally selfish in their whole process. And And that's every aspect of that, right? Like you just talked about having a conversation with somebody, but we're busy looking at our phones and scrolling through, looking for something that's going to catch our attention, interest us, make us laugh.
It's not even that's true. Man, this is getting heavy real quick, but I will say this. It's how it makes you feel. Mm-hmm. You're scrolling because of how it makes you feel. And I do think, hey, public service announcement, the more you know. Ding, 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 ding. Put down your phone. Have a conversation with somebody. Yep. Try it and see if there's an awkward silence and see if, man, I've been disengaged maybe a little bit from human being-ish. Being a human.
Yeah.
Being a human. So before we get too deep into that.
What if they just ask the question, how does it make you feel? How, like if verbally, or if their goal in any type of sales, any communication in this world, what if your goal in any interaction with somebody is to think, I want to make them feel good.
Yeah.
Instead of always me feel good.
Yeah. There's a great book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And one of the habits is to seek first to understand before you're understood. Seek understanding. If you can do that in your relationships, that's a great question, Zach. Like you're sitting down with your wife and, you know, she had something that went on during the day. How'd that make you feel? All of a sudden they start to share a little more. Mm-hmm. So that's why I love this business, because you can actually be a better human.
Yep. Take a genuine interest in others, and that's the whole podcast.
Yeah. All right. See you guys. We do want to give you some stuff. And Zach is right. We did talk about, we'll center on this today, this idea of tonality. And I did look up tonality in the dictionary because I wanted to know what it said, what words it said. And it's kind of cool because I heard tonality so much in sales. I've heard it a lot. And when you look it up, it doesn't really talk about voice. It's actually a musical term. And it's the harmony of notes working together. Mm-hmm. I love that idea. I love that picture. Like if you take a...
What if you substitute the word notes for words?
Yeah, that's what you would do. Absolutely. It's like there's music in a conversation and having the right tone or matching a tone.
You think of flow. Flow is a word that comes to mind. Right. Continuous, flow, soothing.
You can tell appeasing. When a note's not right. You can tell when a piano or a guitar is not tuned correctly, you know, and I've got the tuner and I put it next to my guitar and I'm like, ding, 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 you know, trying to find the note to match the tune. And then it's, you know, in harmony, that's in harmony with that. And the same is true. That's what this idea of tonality is. If you are sitting with Mrs. Jones in her home, or more honestly, I think it's more important if you're on the phone, because the barriers of body language are you don't have that available. There's a lot of pieces that you don't have control over. Mm-hmm. I mean, Mrs. Jones could have a unicycle or juggling chainsaws in her living room while she's talking to you like that. That very well could be happening, right? Yeah. You have no control of that. I can't say, Krusty the Clown, I need you to take a break for 30 minutes so I can talk to Mrs. Jones about her life insurance situation. Okay. I don't know what's going on for the most part, but
it's that same kind of idea of like your senses, right? Mm-hmm. Like when you're in person, you have so many different senses that are going on.
Correct.
It could you know, sight, you know, it could be a smell, right?
Space.
It could be a nice apple pie being cooked in there.
Right. Yeah.
You know, just listening to them, even touch. Like, you know, sometimes, you know, if you're talking about something emotional and you're crying, and you give them a hug or something like that. Like you have all those different senses, and over the phone, you're very limited on those. So your other senses get magnified. It's just like somebody who unfortunately lost their ability, or maybe never had their ability to see. Right. Their hearing is advanced and they can visualize through their hearing. Or they can't hear, but they can see, and they become very sharp at reading lips and moving through that. That's a very good
point. Yeah. When you lose a sense, the others become enhanced, like Daredevil from Marvel, right?
And that's what it is over the phone.
It is. And the more you practice it, the better you'll get at it, because you'll be able to read tone, right? But whenever I do training, I try to think of it in terms of providing you guys handholds. That's what I say. Like you're climbing a wall, and we want to give you these handholds that you can grab onto. Are these handholds always true? Will they always work? No, but they'll work sometimes. And the sometimes is what gets you 1 or 2 or 3 more apps during a week than what most people get, right? So the very first thing I do want to talk about is let's start with the bottom first of the 3 that we talked about.
Okay.
Let's talk about speed versus pace. All right. And the number one issue I see, or the number one mistake that I see agents making, is especially new agents. I'll give you 2. Okay. Number 1 for new agents is they go way too fast.
Absolutely.
They are buzzsawing through their script because they are afraid they're going to get hung up on. I think that's why they're doing that.
Yeah, I think, in my opinion of that, you're right. It is a lot of fear. I think it's a lack of understanding your clients. Yeah. I think it's a lack of understanding the sales process. Correct. And what we're trying to accomplish.
Yes.
All those other areas, when they're a little, I don't want to say weaker, but if they're a little less experienced in those other areas, the thought is, well, the way I keep Miss Jones on the phone is if I say everything 1,000 miles an hour and she's not able to hang up on me, and all of a sudden I'm going to get an app.
Right.
Or they're so new and shaky, as we both once were, that their anxiety kind of takes over and they are just sped up naturally.
Right.
I tell you, a lot of times, like when I hear the podcast, sometimes I feel like I'm talking very fast, but in the moment here, I feel like I'm not talking fast. But we always sound a little different than we think we sound.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you can, one of the reasons I really like dialing back the speed is it gives the agent the opportunity to listen to what is being said and not being said. And if you're buzzsawing through a script, then you're missing a ton of stuff. Like you're missing the reason we're having this conversation, Mrs. Smith, is because Mrs. Smith's sister died 2 months ago. And the agent who's buzzsawing, hears that and they're like, oh, okay. So do you have any other coverage? Like, whoa, like this is a human being with a human interaction.
Right.
Or this is the other question. Did they have any coverage? Like that's a complete miss, right? And there's a time for that question, but that's not the time at that point. It's a moment on pace where you can actually be quiet and pause.
Yeah, and I think we would all agree that does phone sales is that first 30 to 45 seconds is the most important. It's the most crucial. And when you feel like you're steamrolling over your client, you get, it's not going to be good. And you have to think about what are the main reasons of why a client would hang up on you early. One, they don't know who you are. They don't know why you're calling. Right. And they simply can't understand you. Here's the thing. A lot of people that do telesales are calling clients that are typically older, right? So they're getting a phone call from a number they don't know, somebody they're familiar with. They don't know who you are. They don't know why you're calling, and they don't even know the words you're saying. Yeah. How in the world are they going to be able to form a connection and you're going to stand out and be different? And the flip side of that is a thing called pace. Right? A lot of people confuse speed and pace. Yeah. Speed is that 100-yard sprint that you may be able to get. Pace is the cross country when you're running 4 laps around.
Very well said. Yeah. My son runs cross country, and you don't see these kids full out sprint out the gate. They'd be toast. They wouldn't even finish the race.
You're exactly right. Now, if you took a sprinter and made them run a mile, and the first lap they may be in the lead, right? But who's going to end up winning the race? Yeah. And because the sprinter, you can't keep up, you can't do that. And pace is all about is about what we're talking about flow. We're talking about harmony. We're talking about continuous.
Yeah.
But how do we be flow with harmony and have the conversation continuous without being fast? Well, if we're trying to go fast to eliminate pauses, because there is a thing about pauses can cause issues.
Correct. Especially on the front side.
Correct. But you do not flow through that to eliminate pauses by adding speed, because now you add confusion.
Right.
You just talk slower, but you put your sentences together, right? So you're not able to go through it.
Yeah. So an example would be, and this is a good pause point. If I'm calling, I'm saying, "Hey Zach."
Yeah, who's this?
Hey Zach, it's Chris with Senior Benefits Services. A little while ago, you had sent in this card requesting information about the state-backed burial plans to take care of final expenses. I'm the agent who was put in charge of your case. I need to ask you some questions to confirm this information and make sure we get it out to you. I have your address as 587 Success Way, and I have your birth date as 4/20/1974. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great.
That was absolutely perfect. And what I loved about that, and if you guys rewind that and go listen to it again, the most important thing is it was clear. I understood what he was saying. He wasn't freaking out, scaring me to death. But there was no breaks for me to interrupt. And he didn't do it in a rude way. He didn't do it in any type of way that's going to make me feel uncomfortable. And the next words are out of my mouth is answering a question and confirming the information,
Right.
rather than, what's going on.
Yeah.
One of the things I hate more than anything that bothers me, and I don't know, maybe you like it. I don't know. We didn't talk about this, but when you say, "Hey, is this Chris?"
Oh, yeah.
And then you're like, there's a pause, but usually they say, "Yeah." You say, "Yeah, it's Chris." Be like, "Hey, Chris, this is Zach. How you doing today?"
Right.
Like, nobody's going to tell you how they're really doing
And
when they don't know who you are. And then
Yeah.
it's going to be a defense mechanism. It's like, why do you want to know how I'm doing? What's going on? Who are you calling about? What is this about? Now you're answering their questions.
And I'm in 100% agreement with you. I will say I've seen very successful agents do that, but they've been doing it for a long time. And they have control.
Yes.
I'm amazed, and I'm very impressed when they're able. They
probably have something else.
They have some other pieces. Yes, we'll talk about some of that other stuff. But if you're a new agent, and that's my focus, is to equip new agents to do this, because I know the confident ones will figure this out. The new ones who are trying to figure it out, they need these handholds. Like that first pause, "Hey, Zach, I give you a chance to respond, and now you have a sense of control, and then I can move forward." Like that pause is enough. So that pacing is very important and not buzzsawing. So now let's talk about this other, and there's more to this, guys. Like we could probably do 10 podcasts on speed and pace, right? But this next piece is, we'll move our way up, okay? Would be directive versus permission. Okay, in our tone. That's directive versus permission. And that is where the confidence sellers do so well. Is confidence covers a multitude of sins. And confidence is in a relationship with competence. And they put in enough reps, they've gotten hung up enough on, they've gotten yelled at enough, they know their products, they know their services, they have a belief in this product.
Confidence has a unique sense of calmness inside of it.
Yeah.
And it's less reactive.
Correct.
And in any situation, especially over the phone, when you're reactive to their objection or their apparent objection, a smokescreen, if you will, like something that isn't necessarily true, but you haven't earned each other's trust yet, that calmness allows you to move forward, stay cool, doesn't bother you, doesn't react, and that speaks something. That speaks volumes for your client and being able to move forward through that.
Right. And that directive tone, even on that front side, Zach, where I'm saying, "Hey, Zach," and then I'm going into confirming the address, like it's not a permission-seeking tone. It's a directive tone. I have this. I have this. Is that correct?
Can you give me an example of the permission speaking?
Yeah. Hey, Zach.
Yes.
Hey, Zach. It's Chris with Senior Benefits Services. How you doing today?
Fine. What's this about?
This is about the state-regulated final expense programs that you requested. Do you remember filling that out?
No.
Okay. Well, that's not a big deal. You probably forgot what you forget. I forget stuff all the time. I just need to confirm some things here. Now, do you live at 576 Northeastern Way? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I have your birthday as 4/20/1964. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. How'd you get my birthday?
Yeah. Well, like I said, you had filled out this card. Like,
Yeah.
it's
could,
like a
you could-
handoff of.
You could see everything, and like it just feels different. Your energy's, I don't know if you have restless leg syndrome, but the whole time you're doing that, you're shaking. It fit perfect actually, but it's no confidence. It's very passive. You have no control. You may be saying the same words, but that's the whole idea: is how you're saying them.
Correct.
The confidence in the words you're saying. You're almost like, oh my gosh, I hope they answer the phone. Oh my gosh.
I hope I can keep them on the phone.
Hey guys, I've talked to them for more than 2 minutes. This may be an app. Like, they feel that. They can sense that. Do you think that's the person you want writing a policy to protect your family, and the promise, because the promise we're leaving that client is that when they're not there to take care of their family any longer, that we're going to be the ones, and the insurance companies we represent are going to be the ones that are actually going to step in and take care of their family when they can no longer do it.
Right.
We are their best friends. We are their companions. We are their people that they can depend on. We're their right-hand man to be able to put this policy in place when they're not there. And do you think that's the person you want to do that?
No. And a matter of fact, you may get through the whole thing and not know why you didn't get an app if you have a nice enough person on the phone. But there are two ingredients to this. We teach this all the time to trust. Number one is empathy. Number two is authority. Without that authority, you will get friend zoned every time. Every time.
Without that empathy, there's no relationship.
Right. Yeah. So there's no relationship on that side. And that's the other part, Zach. Like the other mistake I see on this part of it, like we talked about early agents, like newer agents, and the mistake they made of going too fast. The other thing I see is, like, you have a dial you have to turn. Like in these three areas, you have dials that you have to turn. And this directive piece, sometimes I see confident agents, they will steamroll people. Now, they may have the right pacing, but they're so directive, their tone never changes. And they're just directive talking to them the whole time. Like, for me, like that directive piece, I may say next, hey, Zach, I need you to go ahead and grab a pen and paper, and I'm going to give you some important information, okay? Yeah, so you go grab the pen and paper, that's fine. But if that continues on throughout that whole thing, I'm going to miss a lot of the empathy side and not connect with you as a human being.
Absolutely. And again, on that flip side, like you could literally, like you said, if you're good enough in the confidence in your pacing, and you could almost be so directive that you can actually get an app.
Right.
It may or may not stay in the books too long.
Correct.
On the other side of that, you could be so passive, right? You could be so permission-based that the conversation never moves on. And this, a way, I guess, for me, a way to diagnose this is if you have great activity, you have a great attitude, you have a great lead source, you're getting a bunch of people on the phone, but all your phone calls last no longer than 3-4 minutes.
Correct.
This is a symptom of that, because at the end of the day, we can get them on the phone, we can confirm the information, but if we're not directive enough to know, I've established this sales principle, now I need to move to the next part, I need to move to the next part, I need to move to the next part, you have to be in control and do that. If you're not guiding them along, it's going to stall out. If it stalls out too long, you're wasting their time, and they will then start throwing objections. They will start getting out of it, and you'll start to sense that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's an important dial. Matter of fact, Zach, I did another training, sat with an agent, had, I don't remember, 100 leads and decent leads. All leads are great. But had at least 15 incomplete applications.
Wow.
And it, from my perspective, it was all based on tone. Every bit of it, there was this, and I'm challenging you guys. Please record yourself and listen to yourself and ask, would I buy from myself? Because there was a nervous energy throughout her whole tone all the way through the process. And I'm like, I don't know if that's physiological. I don't know. Maybe you need to like see an occupational therapist or just practice speaking from here. But something's got to change. She started making those changes and immediately she got an application. It was completely different. It's amazing how important. And it is like, you know, if I'm hitting an E note or not hitting the E note, you're going to hear it. You're going to feel it. It's going to go through you. It's the same with language, conversations.
I'm a big believer in energy, man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like energy is this force and it flies right through that phone. And I don't care if you're not able to, you know, be healthy personally in the different areas of your life, it's going to show through. Your attitude, what's going on, like every aspect of that. Like I'm a big believer in getting the right mindset, getting the right energy, let that transfer through the phone, through this podcast to you. It has to be right. That has to be healthy because that nervous energy, you really think a client that's never met you face to face, that doesn't know you, that, they may want to take care of their family and put a plan in place, but trust is the most important and the first thing that we must establish. It's hard to trust somebody you've never met and you just talked to put something so important in place when they're shaking about it.
Yeah, I mean, they're giving you Social Security, they're giving you banking, all this stuff. Like, if they get a sense that you are not trustworthy based on even your tone, that makes a difference. Finally, we'll jump to this. And I have these as verses, but I just want to pay attention to them, okay? Because there is a dial here. It's conviction versus enthusiasm.
And I'll say this, when we talked about dials, Chris, the dial's different for everybody.
Correct.
We are different personalities. We have different life experiences. We have different tonalities naturally.
Right.
So, like, when you look at these verses, not one is good and one is bad. There's going to be a middle. It's like buying a speaker, an amp for your guitar, right? Every one, the dials are going to be slightly in the middle. One may be more to the left. The other one may be more to the right. You have to find that special thing to get you in tune.
So when I speak about this, I'm speaking to newer agents typically. All right. So these are the things: speaking with conviction, being directive, and having good pace. Like those three things, if you can get those, you will get to an application in most cases with somebody on the phone. Now, if you're a strong personality, an A-type personality, you're going to have to pay attention to your directiveness. You're going to have to pay attention to, if you're a like life of the party type of personality, you're going to have to pay attention to your enthusiasm.
You may have to pay attention to your speed.
Yeah.
Typically, it's a little faster.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of a nerve thing, but it can also be a personality thing, right? So we're showing you the dial. You have to determine where it turns, and it only happens through activity. That's it. Because most people won't put in the reps to figure this out. It's like you said, Zach, the guitar. If I'm playing the guitar, at some point, it's going to make sense, and the sound's going to make sense, and how it works together makes sense. So...
And does your client's personality or energy have anything to play with your specific tonality? What I mean by that is, let's say you get this thing dialed in to where you have the same tone, almost to where you recorded yourself and hit play every time you dialed the phone.
Right.
How does the difference in your clients affect that?
Let me say this. If you're going to make a mistake, make the mistake of being... let's say, I want to say neutral. Make the mistake of neutral, okay? Because that will take you places. Because if you are super high energy, guess what all telemarketers are? Super high energy. Hey, Chris, how you doing? Hey, Zach, what's up? Hey, like, boom, done. Hang up. If you're too low, they're going to feel like you're wasting their time. So if we can hit neutral and then make the adjustment, If I'm Mrs. Mary and she's baking pies and she's super nice to me, then I can turn up my natural enthusiasm, right?
Okay.
So, I'll turn it up a little bit.
You're almost like you're matching hers.
Correct.
You're matching her energy. You're matching her pace, their level.
If you're making a mistake, if that sounds complicated to you as a new agent, then neutral. Stay neutral until you feel comfortable enough to adjust the dial. You understand what I'm saying? Like that volume. If you're not, like, there are buttons you shouldn't press. There are dials you shouldn't touch yet on your car, right? So don't touch those until you're ready. But the one I pay attention to is neutral with conviction. And what I mean by that is if I can get to the point where I've confirmed everything, Zach, you've grabbed a pen and paper, and we start this talk, I can say, hey, Zach, before we get started, I just want you to know I love what I do. I've been doing this 10 years, and I help families. In that time, I've helped 40 families with their death claims. And the sad part about that is there's plenty of families that decided not to do anything, and I've seen a wake of devastation as a result of that. Mm-hmm. So I want you to know I'm here to serve you. Regardless of what we do, I'm here to serve you because I care about you and your family. Now, let me ask you a couple questions. Like, I can shift to conviction, and all of a sudden, I was directive, and now I sound like a human being. Mm-hmm. It's a good start.
I love it. So conviction is very similar to confidence. Mm-hmm. Confidence has a sense of calm to it. Mm-hmm. Conviction takes that, in my opinion, one step further. You have the calmness. You have, you know how to write the app. You've written an app, but it has a belief, and it starts to transfer that belief
Correct.
And that effectiveness and that experience. So it's not just confident in your own abilities, but confident in all of your experiences. And now you're gently handing that over to the client to create that same feeling for them of calmness, of
yes.
confidence, mm-hmm. of understanding, of some empathy in there, to really connect and figure out that, again, as we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, that it's about them mm-hmm. and it's not about us.
Correct. And Zach, I'll tell you, like, this is true of the phone, but it's true of face-to-face.
It's true of human interactions.
It's true
everywhere.
of human interaction, right? Yeah. So I hope this was helpful. Just a reminder of these dials: speed versus pace, directed versus permission, and conviction versus enthusiasm. And guys, reminder, this whole course is inside of our library. You can find that at lifeinsuranceacademy.org. We'd love for you to join us in our courses and coaching. We meet weekly and talk about this stuff. We have a very principle-driven sales process. And if you need to talk about that every week and it gets you one more app a week, we're happy to help you.
Absolutely.
Good stuff. Thank you guys for being a part of this. We'd love to hear your comments. Please hit the subscribe button, and we will catch you on the next Life Insurance Academy podcast. See ya.